Welcome back once again to the Whole Counsel Devotional. Today we're looking at Genesis 1:28. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." God has created Adam and Eve in His image, and now He tells them to be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. While God here is blessing marriage, as well as instructing us to take care of His creation, I'd like to look at what God is indirectly creating and blessing. You see, when God brings Adam and Eve together and tells them to have children, He's not just creating marriage and family. He's creating friendship and community as well. Before long, we'll arrive at the famous verse in chapter 2, where God declares that it isn't good for Adam to be alone, and so He creates Eve. That story is a retelling of what we find here in chapter 1, but we often limit our thoughts on that statement to marriage and family. However, God didn't simply create a man and a woman, or even that first couple and their kids. As He instructs Adam and Eve to have children, He's creating not only one family, but multiple families, friendships, and communities. He's creating the body of Christ. Paul talks about these truths in 1 Corinthians 12. After talking about the many different gifts, ministries, and activities, he continues in verse 7 writing, "But the manifestation of the Spirit is given to each one for the profit of all." Further down in verses 18 to 20 he writes, "But now God has set the members, each one of them, in the body just as He pleased. And if they were all one member, where would the body be? But now indeed there are many members, yet one body." And in verse 26, "And if one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. Or if one member is honored, all the members rejoice with it." God has created all of us and made us different for the express purpose of helping each other. Our lives aren't complete when we find a spouse, or even when we have children or grandchildren. There are many that God has called to a different life and who will never marry or have children, but they aren't somehow incomplete because of it. Just as God said about Adam, it's not good for us to be alone. But not being alone isn't about getting married nearly as much as it is about being part of God's family and members of Christ's body. But how can we do that when we're by ourselves? How many of us and our friends aren't regularly making time for fellowship with the body of Christ? The author of Hebrews writes, "And let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching." But sadly, as we near Jesus' return, it seems there are more and more people who neglect gathering together with other believers. This daily devotional doesn't come out on Sundays because I want for us to be with each other, exhorting and encouraging each other, suffering together, and rejoicing together. Now, I know that many people have been hurt in church. You might feel like church would be great if it wasn't for the people. But you see, church is the people. Sure, we're not going to agree with everything the pastor says, and we're not going to come away from church without being hurt occasionally. We're all imperfect people, and many people in church might be there for the wrong reasons. To paraphrase a line from the movie Parenthood, you need a license to buy a dog or drive a car. You need a license to catch a fish, but they'll let anybody call themselves a Christian. Yet that's all the more reason for passionate disciples of Jesus to be in church. As the angel Clarence says to Jimmy Stewart's George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life, "Each man's life touches so many other lives, and when he isn't around, he leaves an awful hole, doesn't he?" People need us to share those gifts the Spirit has given us, and we need the gifts of others in our lives. People need us to share those gifts the Spirit has given us, and we need the gifts of others in our lives. When we don't do that, there is an awful hole in our lives and in others' lives because we're not using our God-given gifts to their fullest potential. I want to leave you with a story from many years ago in my life. The church we attended had 2 services on Sunday morning, and my family and I had arrived for the second service. As we drove around the parking lot, I was frustrated that those who had attended the early service weren't leaving fast enough, so there were no spots available to park. And so I said, "These people need to get their butts out of church." However, in the infinite wisdom only a 4-year-old can possess, our daughter responded, "No, Daddy, they need to keep their butts in church." That's the exhortation I'll leave with each and every one of us. Let's keep our butts in church. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Have a great day.